Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Vox Vomitus. I am your host, Jennifer Ann Gordon, the author of the Kindle Award-winning novel Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent, as well as the Hotel series and the recent Pretty Ugly. With me today, as always, is Vox Vomitus Allison Martine, author of the Bourbon books, with her bourbon right there, which include Dibs Since September and Move On Melinda. Our special guest today is Preslaysa Williams, the author of A Low Country Bride. Ta-da! So, a fantastic actress and star of a Nickelodeon show. Is this true, Preslaysa? Yeah.
Yes.
She's like, all of those things. I am an author and an actress and a mom and a superstar. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your book?
All right. So my name is Preslaysa Williams. I am an author. I write contemporary romance and women's fiction. I write own voices stories, which means that my main characters usually share the same, own voices stories are stories where the author shares the same marginalized background as their characters. And my books, I like to say that they are fiction with an Afro-Filipina twist. So many of my main characters, they share my same heritage. I'm African American and Filipino. I write heartwarming stories, sweet romances, usually set in the South. I like to say that my books are Hallmark with hard topics. So you would have that Hallmarky feel to them, but then we would delve into the deeper stuff sometimes as well. So it's not all roses and flowers and all that all the time. But they always have happy endings. What else? Oh, I'm an actor. Like Jennifer said, as a teenager, I was on the Nickelodeon show, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, with Pat Morita, the late Pat Morita, who was Mr. Miyagi on The Karate Kid, if you remember that movie. That was really fun. That was a really fun time for me being on the Nickelodeon set in Orlando, Florida. The Nickelodeon Studios isn't in Orlando, Florida anymore, but the 90s Nickelodeon era, I was part of that. If you ever saw the show All That, Kenan and Kel from All That, the guy who's on the Saturday Night Live, Kenan, he was on, so I would hang out with him and Kel a lot and stuff and all the other Nickelodeon stars of the 90s. So that was a really cool time for me.
Did you ever date one of them?
Let's see, I'm a mom. I have children. Huh?
I said, did you ever date one of them? Kenan or Kel?
No, I never dated one. No. I was book nerdy girl. I was a book nerd girl. I didn't date either of them. We just kind of hung out at production parties and stuff like that. What else? Oh yeah, I'm a mom, 2 kids, 9 and 11. I homeschool them, and I was homeschooling pre-COVID, and then COVID came, and homeschooling was not homeschooling for me anymore. It was this weird thing where I had to be at home with my kids all day.
It was lockdown schooling.
It was lockdown.
The same as homeschooling.
Yes. Yeah, that wasn't my way of homeschooling. And what else? That's about all I can think about at the moment.
I like the way you described your.
Oh, you wanted me to talk about my book?
Yeah, you got to talk about Low Country Bride, but I love the description of Hallmark with hard topics.
Yes.
Okay, so A Low Country Bride. So it's about this wedding planner who leaves New York City, where she's working for this big name bridal gown designer. And she leaves New York City temporarily to go down south to Charleston to take care of her dad, who breaks his hip. And while she's there, she ends up working at a small, struggling bridal shop in downtown Charleston, which is owned by the hero of the book, a man named Derek. And she comes in with her unique vision and kind of turns the place around and helps his business grow. And as they're working together, they fall in love. But before they can fall in love, they have to get over their obstacles to love. And one of them for Maya, the lady here on the cover of the book, Maya is, she has sickle cell anemia, which gives her about 10 to 15 years to live. So she has to determine or decide whether or not she wants to allow herself to love, knowing this about herself. And she also kind of battles or kind of has to deal with like the ableism in her industry, because not that many people know about her illness. She doesn't want people to know about her illness because she's afraid of ableism and stuff like that. And Derek is a widow, and he has he's a single dad. He has a daughter, a young daughter, and he also has to decide whether or not he wants to let himself love again after losing someone that he had hoped to spend the rest of his life with.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the second chance at romance kind of deals for both of them, which you don't see very often. It's usually maybe for one or the other, but both of them are coming off such big heartaches that it's like, all right, are they going to risk it? Because both of them have just been so hurt before. So I love when you describe it as hallmark with like the heart issues, and because they aren't just light issues, like having someone who has a terminal illness, that's a really big thing to overcome. And you deal with other issues, including violence and racism, and all of these things are at the forefront of your book.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how to say this. So I'm just going to go for it. You have like this superstar story. Your book, A Low Country Bride, was kind of acquired by the publishing industry in quite an exciting way. So there was an open call. Avon did an open call for Own Voices authors and unagented Own Voices authors. So all of the authors who are watching our show right now are probably hearing this going, an unagented open call to Avon. How did you hear about it? What was the process getting there?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Getting here.
There. What is the process? Okay. Everyone gather around for a little story that may last an hour. No.
We've got an hour. We've got drinks. We're good.
Okay. So I started writing back in 2008. Well, I started writing fiction back in 2008. And between 2008 and when I went to the open call with Avon Books, I did the whole querying process, like everyone, amass your rejections, go to writers' conferences and pitch, get requests, and then maybe they like it, maybe they don't. So I've gone through all that roller coaster. So this has been I've been doing this for about 10 years of this. Yeah. So I started in 2008, and then in 2018 is when I went to 2 open calls with Avon. So the first one was in 2018. And I heard about that open call through Twitter. Avon had put out a message on their Twitter account saying that they were looking for Own Voices authors, and that they were going to be at the Romance Writers of America conference. And, if you're going to be at the conference, to sign up. So I said, I'm going to be at the conference. I'll sign up and I'll pitch this book. So I did. And then they had a list of editors. So I kind of looked at, I read their bios, and I figured I picked out someone who did contemporary romance like me, or, what I write. And so I made my appointment. And that first meeting in 2018, there was so many writers there. The line was outside the room.
I can imagine.
I can't imagine.
An open call, everybody's there with 5 manuscripts going, publish me now.
Yeah. I know,
the line was outside the room. And, we're all, hi, how you doing? Trying to cheer each other up, or just being quiet, whatever, practicing our pitch, And so I met my now editor at that time. It was a very short meeting. I pitched this story, and then she said, how many words is it? I was like, well, right now it's about 60 or 65,000 words. And then she said, well, we publish books that are between 75 to 85,000 words. So that's not in our word count, but maybe you want to think about, developing maybe that subplot. And she referred to the subplot with Derek and his daughter. Maybe develop that more, and you could, make the story bigger. But she said, but of course it's your story, so you can do what you want. And then she's like, well, nice meeting you. And thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. So I didn't get a
hurts.
request.
It's so close.
No, no contact information or anything. I was like, okay, well, thanks. And I just left. And I continued
smiling, just go.
Huh?
Yeah, I was just saying, you're an actress. Just keep smiling, cry inside, go back,
you're like,
keep working.
Request my book.
At least request a partial.
Please, I will add more words.
I'll do
3
whatever.
chapters. And then I can write the rest while you're reading the 3 chapters.
You're speaking our language. Allison's into that right now. She's like, hold on. Story of my life right now.
Anyway, Preslaysa, tell us the rest of your story.
Oh, yeah. So the rest of the story is, so I continued with the conference, went to the classes, met some other editors. Then I was like, well, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll make it make a change or whatever. Maybe I'll make it bigger. Inside, though, I was kind of intimidated by writing like what they would call like a single title length story, because I had never written a romance that big. I usually up until that point, I only wrote romances that were kind of just focused on the romance. Like I never developed like subplots and full length romances that would have like the layers to it. So it kind of intimidated me, but I was like, I guess I'll try it. So then I spent that next year working on it. And I was like, well, I can always pitch it to other publishers and other editors or whatever, because it actually would be better, to make it bigger, because not that many publishers would publish a romance that's like 60 to 65,000 words anyway. They usually like to get
because that's like, it's like bottom line of a novel. It's kind of that cusp of novel and novella, and people will see a book there and go, how much for this? Oh, this is a smaller book. There is something to that heft of, okay, the word count's kind of in the genre standard. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So but I was like inside, I was like intimidated about writing that big of a book, like a big book. So anyway, so then I spent the next year working on it, and then the next year I was going to the same conference again. And while I was like maybe a month before, Avon put another call and say, oh, we're looking for own voices. This time we will be at the conference, and we're also taking online submissions by there was like an early September date. So if you couldn't come to the conference, you could still submit online, and they had like a special link and stuff to upload your manuscript and everything. So they were doing it like 2 ways. And so then I said, oh, well, maybe the editor that I met last year will be there again. Maybe I make an appointment. So then I signed up, made the appointment. Her name was there. So I made the appointment with her. And this time the line wasn't as long.
But who knows how many came in through like the online submissions.
Yeah. They probably had a lot of online submissions.
Times.
Yeah, I would think they would have gotten way more doing that, just because you wouldn't have to physically be there or travel to get there. I'm surprised you signed up for the same editor. I'd be scared to go back. I'd be like, who else? I don't want to go back to you. Give me somebody new, someone who doesn't already tell me that the book needs to be different. But you'd made the changes by that point, yeah?
So that already shows that you can work well with this editor, because you took notes, you worked on them for a year.
Yeah.
I have a big book now.
Yeah, I have a big book. So then I said, hi. So I met with her and I was like, hi, I don't know if you remember me, because we only talked for like 5 minutes in last year, but you suggested that I, do something with this book, like make it a little bigger, work on the subplot. And I did, so it's bigger. So, and then I gave like a little short pitch. She's like, oh, great. She's like, oh, send me the full. So then she wrote down her email address in my bullet journal.
Frame that.
Yeah. And now it's a real thing. Thank you.
Yes. I still have the bullet journal on my bookshelf where she put her email, and I put the date of when I met her. So I still have that bullet journal.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I was like,
you should frame that like with like the cover art next to each other, and like the stub of your first check for the advance. Like all of that.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
So what was the turnaround time then? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, so then I sent in the manuscript, and at the same time, like I said, because I've been doing this for like 11 years by now, so I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna get like rejections. So I pitched other editors and sent them the same manuscript, And I pitched agents. I kept pitching, agents, editors, everyone, the whole world.
Anyone.
Yeah, anyone.
Will anyone read this?
Yes. Yes. So then I think I sent it to her that summer of 2019. And then in January of 2020, she sent an email saying, "Oh, do you have time to talk?" And I said, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So I'm thinking that it's like a revise and what do you call it?
R&R.
Yeah.
Yeah. Revise and resubmit. Been there.
Because I was like, oh yeah, it's probably like an R&R, and she wants to talk to me about the R&R or whatever. So then she called me. She's like, "Oh, I'd like to acquire this manuscript," and I screamed.
I would too.
Yeah, you should.
That's the appropriate response is screaming.
Did you have? So I know it was a request for unagented authors. Did you end up getting an agent, or are you scared when they were like, "We want to acquire this"? My first thought would have been like, I went to school for theater. Me, not you. I went to school for theater. I don't have the skill set to negotiate with Avon.
Avon, yes.
I know, like Avon.
Yeah. So for this first book, I did not go in it agented. I went unagented. I know.
Okay, you're brave. That's brave right there.
I know. I've had friends get accepted places recently. Like, "Oh, I got an offer, but I don't have an agent." And then they kind of queried some agents real quick saying, "Look, I already have an offer." And agents were like, "Oh, I'll be your agent," because they wanted to like get in on the deal. Because they get easy money. They're like, "What? You already sold it?"
Yeah. And that's a great way to do it too. I just didn't want to do it that way because like I kind of wanted to take my time to find an agent. So I didn't want to like sign on the dotted line with someone, then they do, they get in on this deal, and then like maybe later on I don't like them, and then that's all weird and awkward.
Well, and you did that. Your story is amazing because you did all the legwork. You went, you pitched, you got feedback, you went, you took the feedback, you did what was asked, you went back. They wanted what would the agent have contributed at that point? I mean, hopefully you have the experience from having been in the entertainment industry that you've read contracts before. Mm-hmm. So you're not like, I don't know what I'm looking at. This is a problem. So other than that, you did all the work. You deserve your own agenting commission on that one. So
yes.
Bravo.
Yeah. You went to so many conventions. You like wrote so many query letters. People don't understand. That takes time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Writing the perfect query letter, it's not something, I mean, like our viewers who watch this who aren't writers, like you have no idea how many hours and weeks and workshops it takes just for a query letter.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just like, please, will you consider reading the first 10 pages of my book?
Yeah. You got to like grab them in that letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just sucks your soul. So the fact that you were doing it for years and years and didn't give up, you're amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I took breaks though. You got to take breaks when you're in the querying trenches. So like I would take breaks from querying, and I would still be writing, but I wasn't like actively looking for publication or anything. So I took breaks because it's hard to be out there and doing that.
That's a lot of hearing the word no and reading the word no. But I mean, so I was a theater performer. You're an actor. Like you get used to no's. But I always feel like the no with a writing project, it like hurt more than a no for an acting project for me. Because like you can be turned down for an acting project for so many different reasons. Like you don't look right next to the other person in the show. Yeah. You're too short. You're too this. You're too that. You're like, it's just, and those are things like you really can't control. Like I'm 5'2". I'll never not be 5'2". And if I was being cast against somebody who is 6'4", Adam Driver, perhaps.
Adam Driver,
perhaps. Like it would be an awkward thing for us to kiss.
Yeah.
But like my words, like that's me. That's my soul. Yeah. And when somebody says like, I just didn't like it. You're like, oh, you didn't like my heart.
Yes. That's exactly it. Yeah, you put your soul in it. And then like those, it's like, it's little stabs at your heart every time.
Or they say something like, oh, I loved every bit of it except for, and then they basically like say the entire plot. And you're like,
yeah,
except for all of it.
Except for like, I hated the characters. And you're like,
Well,
what
and
did you like?
I was reading after I finished the book. You have like your acknowledgments there and talking about when this book began, and then when I found out the age of your kids, I'm like, there are some numbers here that line up, and I totally can relate to that. As far as when you're a mom, and especially when you've got littles, you are probably not writing and querying full time to the same extent you can when they're a little bit older and aren't physically attached to you at all times. So I know for me, one of the books that I have that's currently out on sub, I wrote it over a span of years because I could only write it in these little tiny increments and didn't have like the brain space because I was completely sleep deprived to be able to do that. So I was looking at like, okay, so you have a kid that it's this age and the book's this old. Yeah, that tracks to be able to do that.
That's so true. Yeah. As a mom, we don't have like that, especially mom of small children. You don't have that brain space to like devote. And I think that's like writing a novel, you need like a lot of time to think.
Yes.
Like
and
a
mommy. It cuts off the synapse right there. And the number of times I'll be working and then it's a little child right here going, mommy. And they could want anything or absolutely nothing or just want you to look at them, but the thought's gone. So I usually don't even try to write unless I have a complete secluded area. And for years, that was one day a week where after I would drop off one child at a preschool, my other child would go to my mother-in-law for a short period of time and I would go to the gym and then I would write for a little bit. And it's like, yeah, this book took years to get to this point. And then when the youngest started preschool, then the rest of the book got done really fast. Like, oh, you're not home. You're not right here in my face.
Yeah.
It's very different. But if you're homeschooling, they're never going anywhere. But they're at least maybe occupied by doing their work.
Yeah,
as opposed to being right here.
Yeah, so for me with homeschooling, like we like go to like different activities during the week. Well, we did. It's kind of opening up again now. Yeah. But like during those activities is when I would write. So I always had my writer's bag packed. And I always had like a laptop, a notebook, or maybe a novel or a craft book, some printed pages of my manuscript, maybe like a little to-do list of things I wanted to accomplish, a writing session. And so once they're like gone, like they go to like gym class, homeschool gym class, or music lessons, or like little social play dates and stuff with other kids.
I used to teach a homeschool ballroom dance class.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know you did that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And all the parents would come and they'd just be like, thank you. And they would all like just like hang out like in our hallway, like on their laptops doing stuff, going like, let's just go get a coffee.
Yeah.
They're safe in this building for an hour.
Yeah. You guys learned the many faults. I'm going to go.
Yeah. And I would take, because I knew I was like, I have an hour now. I can really and I packed my noise canceling headphones and I'm ready to go. So I knew like once they're gone, I'm like in the corner. So probably some of the moms would come up to me and be like, wow, you're so studious. Are you like in school or something? Or you like work, do you work like remotely? And I'm like, no, I'm just, working on something over here. But they always would say, you're just so studious. Every time we see you, you're just off to yourself, like on your laptop or writing or something.
Well, studious, though, I noticed on your IMDb bio, because I was checking to make sure I was spelling the name of everything. The name of the show you were on in Nickelodeon is a long name, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo. And I'm just like, I'm going to get that wrong if I don't check. But you also, during some of that period of time, you got your MFA, too. So some of that you might have actually been studying.
Oh, yes, I was. I totally forgot about that.
I forgot about my master's degree.
Preslaysa.
Yes, I was.
What was that like? Were you workshopping? Because I know we've talked to authors before who were going to school while working on their novel, and that part of what they were doing for their MFA was crafting the novel. So by the time they were done with their MFA, they had a book that was basically ready to start querying. Was that a similar process for you, or how did that work?
Yes, so I got my MFA. I think I was attending from 2018 to 2020. Yeah, I graduated last year. And I was working. Wow. I wrote a whole new novel from that, and it's a totally different genre. It's I wanted to do something different outside of romance, so I wrote a dual timeline story that takes place in the present day and the antebellum South, and the two main lead protagonists are like distant relatives of one another, And then I kind of have their stories connecting throughout the story.
I love that.
I do too. Would that be considered, is that historical fiction, or does that fit under some other subgenre there? Because then you've got the dual timeline.
Yeah, so they usually call it dual timeline. They do call them dual timeline stories, or they could be historical fiction. But there is like a subgenre or genre of fiction called dual timelines, where they do have stories taking place in the past and the present, and then they kind of like come together at the end.
Because I've read stories like that, but they usually fit into some other genre too. So I know we've read books. I want to say it was one of, and now I'm blanking on her name, but we had one where it was a horror story, and it was recounting things that happened.
Oh no, Jennifer McMahon.
I knew it was a Jennifer, but I knew it wasn't you.
It wasn't my horror dual
timeline story. And it wasn't yours. But it was Jennifer McMahon's, and they have the dual timeline. But it's clearly a horror story. But I'm assuming you weren't putting in horror or supernatural. Was more of a connected lives. Would it fit under like women's fiction too? Was it
women's fiction? Yes, it can go under women's fiction. It can go under historical, and can go under that dual timeline, what they call dual timeline thing.
Very nice.
So is that book going to be coming out?
So this is the thing. So when you write dual timelines, you got to like kind of make the timelines make sense.
Yeah,
you do.
That sucks though.
So what I'm hearing is they're editing right now. That the book is maybe being tweaked a little. What I'm hearing now is we're tweaking it a little bit. We're maybe editing so that things do this. Merge. That's what we're doing. Merge those.
So people go, that is actually not how it was in the,
Yeah. She answered her cell phone, not in the antebellum South. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. So
as somebody who's written like a book set in the Victorian era, I realized I thought I knew a lot about the Victorian era until I was like physically writing it, and I was like, and then they did. I'm like, are there window screens? Nope, no window screens. Oh no. I'm like, is there even indoor plumbing? What year am I? Where am I? Like, yeah.
This is why when you do like fantasy or science fiction, you just attribute it all to different worlds. It's like our world, but they did have cell phones in antebellum South. See, it's fine. It's not an anachronism.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually last night I was kind of putting it together, writing a spreadsheet or updating it. And then I edit that manuscript on there. So it's on the radar.
It's on the radar. It's there somewhere.
Yeah.
So you are agented now. Mm-hmm. And so the process was your book became acquired by Avon. You have an editor. You have a book. You have a real book deal, like an honest to goodness book deal. And like, wah. And then you queried agents with a different project. Mm-hmm. So do you think that, like, what was your query letter like then? Were you just like, did you just start with the Avon? Because
she includes the copy of Low Country Bride in there and go, BTW.
Like, this is your query letter. It's like your pull sheet is like this. You're like, you just mail that to them and go like, I'm looking for an agent.
Yeah. You want a piece of this, maybe?
Yeah. So what I did was I did query. But what I wrote in my query letter is, now I can think about like what the top paragraph was. I was like, hi, my name is Preslaysa Williams. I am a published author, even though the book was coming out. It's like, I'm a published author. My novel, A Low Country Bride, will be coming out in 2021 with Avon HarperCollins, and I'm looking for representation for future projects.
Nice.
So that's what I said. And then I kind of wrote a little bit about, and then I would write about my future project that I was thinking of. And then I wrote a little bit about myself, like my biography, like I have an MFA. And then I wrote something a little bit fun, like I spent too much time on Facebook and stuff. Like at the very end, I was like, well, looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. And so I got people who asked for samples of my project that I'm working on, or they asked for copies of A Low Country Bride. So then I asked my editor if I could like send them to the agents who requested them, and she said sure. And so I got that. And then some people said no. I got Rejections still. So you still
never
get
goes away,
rejections.
does
You still
it?
get
Never goes
rejections.
away. Never goes away. Gosh. But we love the business.
Yes.
That's why we're here. We love it. We love it.
So yes, you still get rejections. I got like a couple rejections. I got like 20 rejections, I think, last year for agent rejections. So yeah, you still get rejections. I still did, even though I wrote, oh, I'm gonna be published with Avon, blah blah blah. So it happens. And then I kind of narrowed it down to people who were interested, and then some people asked for more of my manuscript, and then I got some offers, and I did get more offers this time than I did pre the Low Country Bride. So then I could kind of pick who I liked, and so then I just kind of talked to people, or talked to the agents on the phone, or I read their representation agreements, and then I kind of narrowed it down to 2. And then I narrowed it down to 1, and then I signed with that 1.
See, and this kind of stuff is fascinating to me because I feel like there's kind of the expected story of you write a book, then you query, then you get an agent, and then you go on submission, and then you sign a book deal. And it's all nice and linear, but we've talked to so many authors that is not what happens, and everybody has a different story. So I love hearing this because I think you're the first one we've talked to who got published before they got an agent and got traditionally published before they got an agent. Because I know some of us, we got published with small publishers, so it didn't usually require an agent. Mm-hmm. But for you to get published with a big name like Avon, and then afterwards go back and get an agent, and that you still are having to go through the query process, that's just really fascinating that it worked that way, and that some of them were just like, yeah. Obviously she's marketable. She's already on the market. She's already on the shelves. Like, I did your work for you.
Like, I already have a brand. We don't have to worry about this.
It is beautiful. Yeah. Well, I love the branding that you said. And I wonder if some of them were expecting you to write something else that was in the same genre, and were any of them like going, okay, I want to represent you, but I want something more like this. I want something else that can go back to Avon, that can go back to that same editor, because you already have a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your thing kind of broke up when you were at. Did you just ask me a question?
Oh yeah, I was just saying. I was wondering if any of them were like wanting you to go back towards the same stuff you were doing for Low Country Bride, to like go back with Avon, go back with the editor, because you already have a relationship with that editor. So yeah. I know that so much of it is about like finding that right fit, and it's almost like it's not just a one fit; it's like a multi-person fit where it's agent to author, and then author and editor. All of those pieces have to line up. So since you already had the agent or the author and editor piece, I was wondering if any of them were like, we need to capitalize on that and want to push you back towards more romance.
Yeah. So what I did, when I was writing, when I was targeting agents, I targeted agents who do represent romance, and then who also do represent women's fiction, because I do have that MFA thesis out there that I need to fix the timelines for. So, and then even before I was published, I heard like my other published author friends who were saying that once you like write or publish a book in like a certain genre, then usually publishers like you to build on that genre and establish your audience with that genre before you jump off into another genre. So they do want to build, my brand of romance, Hallmark with hard topics, Afro-Fiction with an Afro-Filipina twist, and all that lovely stuff. And hopefully we can do that.
Well, and I also liked how you factored in your love of fashion. And I have to assume you love fashion, because I cannot imagine somebody writing so much about stitching and then the different color schemes and the sheath dress. I'm like, I know what a sheath dress is. You lost me after there, because I am not a fashionista, but I knew that part. But I loved how that came through, that your character clearly had like a passion for what she was doing. And I thought it was, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the fact that you reference the idea of gatekeepers a lot in your book, about the gatekeepers of like, this is what is quality, this is what everybody wants, and yet that's not always what people want. It's not what customers want, it's not what readers want. Was that something that was like a wink and a nod to the publishing industry, or was that just happenstance?
So I think it is a nod to the publishing industry, but I did it through the lens of fashion, obviously.
This is about fashion. I have no idea what you're talking about. Dresses. Gatekeepers and
hemlines.
Yes.
And stitching styles and seashells. That is all
it
is about.
A metaphor for word counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your headline's too short. Your word count's too short too.
Get rid of all these seashells. Oh, that's basically saying kill my darlings. I know it.
Yes.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. For me, it is because I'm a writer. Kind of just finding, you have this story. It's not like it hasn't been seen in the market a lot. Like there's variations on it. But like this particular type of story hasn't been like in the market. So kind of, for me, it was like, do I stay true to what I really love and what I want? Or do I kind of cut off these pieces of my story to kind of fit what's already on the shelves?
Were you getting any kind of feedback saying like change your MC, or that they didn't want a character who was struggling with something like sickle cell anemia, or were you getting any kind of specific feedback? Because I know a lot of us, like people who don't write, don't necessarily know that queries can be anything from go away, we don't like you, to we call them the champagne rejections, where they love everything, but they still say no. But some people do actually get feedback that says, change this. So were you getting any kind of things that were saying, we want you to change some element of your story?
So this is what happened with this story. Okay, so when I first wrote this story, it did not have the elements, like the multicultural elements in there, the themes of racism, the themes of terminal illness, the themes of like violence. When I first wrote this story, like when I started it like 10 years ago, it was a straight romance, bridal themed romance, wedding themed romance. And it had about this woman who has these big dreams of like making it big in New York, but she has to determine if she wants to do like stay true to her Southern roots or, make it big in the big city. So that's kind of like basically like an expected trope or storyline or whatever.
I've read something very similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what this story was. It didn't have these other layers to it. I didn't put those layers in it. And I was pitching it just like that. But I was getting like lots of rejections too. So I was getting rejections, but I was trying to fit the mold. But I was getting rejected when I fit the mold. So then after like years of this, I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. So then I said, I'm going to keep the skeleton of that story, but then I'm going to put in these other things that are interesting to me, that interest me or that I'm passionate about. Like you said, staying true to yourself versus fitting that mainstream mold. Those things, like all those themes that you see in the book were things that were interesting to me that I put in after I had gone through like rejection number 267. I just started putting in the stuff that I like.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through so many rejections, but I'm glad that it got to the point where you're like, you know what, I'm going to be putting in what I want. And that's a hard thing about when you're doing something like this, where it's a reflection of you, but then other people are weighing in on what your reflection is. And you're like, but this is my voice and this is the way it reads true for me. And then someone else saying, yes, but audiences won't want this, that, or the other thing. But it's like, if you don't give it to the audience to let them react to it, how would you know? It's like everybody's just presuming, well, an audience wouldn't want to read
about sickle cell anemia, where it's like, yeah, I do. I want to read about sickle cell anemia. I think like just finding characters that are real characters who are struggling with things will always make them more relatable.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things when I've read stories where the main character is what we like to call the Mary Sue, where they have no struggles and they have no really inner life. They're just like, I show up and I give it my all, but there's nothing else going on behind the eyes. That's not a story anyone can connect with. It's not a story anyone can relate to. And that we all have those struggles. We all have those inner doubts. And I think it's a good thing to have characters that reflect some of your own passions and your own kind of insecurities, even for like, okay, am I going to try to do this again? Am I going to try to fit myself into this mold, or am I going to keep querying and get beat down some more?
Yeah. So true. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you go.
I was going to say, did you ever think, because we've all been in there in Rejection City, did you ever think somewhere around Rejection 200, like, what if I just self-publish?
Oh, yeah. I did. Definitely. I had plans to self-publish this. So even as I was submitting, like even as I got the request from the open call from Avon, and then I was at the writers' conferences and sending this book to other editors and publishers and agents, by this time, I had already also had this other plan in my bullet journal of time checklists.
Same bullet journal.
Yeah, same bullet journal where I was like, okay, well, we're going to self-publish this. So I lined up. So I was like, how do I self-publish? So then I went into all the great Facebook groups with all the indie authors, and like they have very great community where they like, freely share information. So they had uploaded like spreadsheets, timelines, things to do, countdown to releases. So I kind of was like, okay, I'm going to do this. If this, the traditional publishing falls through and everyone rejects it, then I'm going to do this. So I just kind of started on that path at the same time that I was hitting send to them. So yeah.
You sound more prepared to self-publish than some of the people who actually did self-publish.
You were definitely more prepared to self-publish than when I self-published. I was like, I'm just going to do this. And then I'm like, I don't know how to do this.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's definitely a different situation when you've got a traditional publisher or even a small publisher who's doing a lot of these things for you. And there's like a spectrum between a large publisher who will do lots of stuff for you and a small one who are like, we'll handle some of this, but the rest of this, you're on your own. And then when you're truly self-publishing and it's like every little piece of this is all my own blood, sweat, and tears, and something's not perfect, the only person to blame is me because I did everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. But yeah, I was ready for that. I don't think that I have like the time to do like truly indie authoring right now. Like I don't really have that time. Probably if my children are out the house or then I could totally like go full-time indie. But yeah, I was ready for that, at least for one book.
One at a time. That's all you can
One
really
at a time is all you can do. So I hate to cut us short, but we are running out of time. Do you have any new releases coming up, or are we still like in the top secret stage of things? Things are being shopped around.
We're in the top secret stage of things, but I am writing. I'm writing furiously, but yes, we are in the top secret stage of things.
I understand that. I think we're all like in the, I can't really talk about this, but there is stuff happening. So
yeah, but I am writing my butt off.
Yes, that's awesome.
Well, and this is me suggesting writing, but I don't know. You might, with your bullet journals, you might be someone who drafts longhand. I don't know.
I do draft longhand.
Whoa.
See, some people have legible handwriting. Some people don't.
My handwriting looks like a serial killer's.
When I handwrite my drafts, I write in print so that I don't have to deal with that, because my cursive is really messy when I get in my flow. So I just write everything in print so that when I have to go back to type it in, I'm just like, okay, I know what this says.
I like it.
That is incredible. Preslaysa, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Allison, thank you, obviously, for being here. Thank you to Roman, our producer. Thank you to Pam Stack, our executive producer. Thank you to everybody at the Global Authors on the Air radio network. This has been a copywritten podcast by the Global Authors on the Air. Stay tuned next week when we will have back once again Carol Goodman discussing her latest novel, Stranger Behind You. Very excited about that. So we will see you all next week.